Part of what made me so excited to talk to you as I've kind of had like a realization or like these shifts in my perspective is that you are really just doing all of the things that you love and you put it into a club and it's working. And I think like what I've been trying to do is, format things for my ideal client, but it's not quite true to like what I love doing. But I think that if I want to do nature stuff or retreats or whatever, the right people are going to find it.
Yes, exactly. That's always sort of been my theory is be authentic to yourself, be who you are, and then the right people that resonate with that show up.
Right. Well, welcome to the Built to Thrive podcast, listeners. I am Lisa Myers with Cultivating Wellness, and our guest today is just one of the coolest people in Ayurveda, Jeremy Anderson. She is an Ayurvedic practitioner. She is also my Ayurveda teacher at Joyful Belly. She is also a teacher for the California College of Ayurveda. And Jeremy, what would you like to add to your introduction?
Yeah, I had taught for the California College of Ayurveda for about 20 years, and I have been teaching for Joyful Belly for about 5 years now. And that's like the roots of my practice. That's what I've been doing the longest. That's what one of the things that makes me most excited about my Ayurvedic career is the teaching, because I never get bored teaching. There's always new students, there's always fun new things to learn about and share. And I mean, as I've moved and as my career has transitioned and changed through the years, I've always been teaching. It's absolutely the roots of my practice and what I love the most. But yeah, I'm thankful to be your teacher and for that to be a part of my practice. There are a lot of other branches of my practice. I have been seeing patients one-on-one right out of the gates and have had a couple of brick and mortars. I had a Panchakarma center in Reno, Nevada when I first started. And then I had a healing collective where I also did Panchakarma in Colorado for a few years. And when we moved back to the Tahoe area in 2011, I started seeing my patients again at a yoga studio in town until the pandemic. And with the pandemic, everything went online and I transitioned online as well. So that was a big shift in my practice from brick and mortar and just seeing people individually to realizing what I could do on an online platform. And that ultimately shifted into having a healing collective. And now I also have a mentorship group with graduates who are looking to build their business. And that's one of the funnest things that I do too, is just help each one of the graduates build from where they are at and what it is that they want to create and put out into the world. And then, I lead retreats. That's one of the most fun things that I do is how do I take Ayurveda and weave it together with my friends in different locations and help people connect with nature deeply in the space, like on a rafting trip or in India climbing the Himalayas or whatever it might be. So just some different ways that put Ayurveda out there into the world.
How long have you been a practitioner?
Since 2020 years.
How did you discover Ayurveda?
I had moved to California for whitewater rafting and had thought that I was just going to do seasonal for a little while. Whitewater rafting in the summer for me, my husband is not a fan of the whitewater. So he was like, well, let's spend the winters in Tahoe at ski resorts and we'll snowboard in the winter and then I'll go, cook at some restaurant while you raft in the summer. So we were just doing that. And then I realized that my reality of snowboarding in the winter was great for play, but supporting it financially was bartending, and I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to do something that was putting more light into the world. And I feel like rafting does do that, but the bartending not so much. So I started to look into it in about 2001 and just sort of accidentally stumbled on the California College of Ayurveda. Went down there for a talk and I hadn't heard the word Ayurveda before I stumbled upon the school. I don't know why I drove check it out. And when I heard the intro to Ayurveda talk, I was like, well, this literally explains everything. Why do I not want to study completely the science that explains everything completely? And just dove right in. And I'm still studying it and will always study it. It answers all the questions. So that's how I ended up in the world of Ayurveda.
Yeah, it does answer all the questions. That's a good way to put it. Gosh, I had all these questions and now I don't know where to start. Well, how did you kind of start out your practice? Did you just start out with one-on-one clients or like have you ever sold like herbal products or anything like that?
Yes, yes, I've probably done all of the things. So that's good. If you're wondering about any of the things, ask me, I'll tell you how it went. Um, I started right out at when I graduated. I reached out. I was like, I should go down to Reno because there's a bigger population. So then I was looking for space and I saw that there was a naturopath who was opening up what was called at the time Conscious Living Rejuvenation Center. And I reached out to her and she's like, "Oh, yeah, no, I've got an office. You can have it. We're building it right now. You can design how the room is built." So it was really kind of divine timing at the time. Everything in her space, she called herself one of the canaries in the mine shaft. She was very sensitive to everything, had Lyme. Her whole family had Lyme. So she had like low VOC carpet, low VOC paint. Every single aspect of the place was filtered and clean and just such a good energy. And then I got to be like, well, I want my sink here and I need a shower in my room. And all of these amazing things sort of came together for this great little panchakarma space. And she was getting referrals from a doctor for her Lyme patients. And then she would prep them up and get them strong enough and then send them to me for panchakarma. So we had like a actual prescription panchakarma kind of happening there, which was really neat. I also found an Ayurvedic doctor from India who was working out of a health food store in Reno at the time, and I started mentoring with him. So for all of my clients, I would go in and sit with that doctor and just talk to him about all the different cases that were coming up and everything that was working and wasn't working. So I learned while I was building my practice how important mentorship was also. Just in building your self-confidence and knowing what works and knowing what else to try. And when you're out there in the world by yourself, it is very hard. And when you're in community, things are a lot easier and you can learn from each other, support each other, and all of that. So that's sort of where I started my practice, was with this Panchakarma Center, in working with a naturopath, a colonics person, a massage person, someone that did Nambudripad's allergy elimination technique, and we all worked with each other. So I worked with an integrative practice within that, as well as in mentorship in a brick and mortar right out of the gates, and learned a lot. And I was there until we moved to Colorado a few years later.
What you were saying was kind of getting me thinking like I mean, I'm always like reaching out and seeking, I guess you could call it mentorship or connection. But what I've found is sometimes there's like some, not to be like negative, but there can be like some ego in the Ayurveda world or
In
even,
every world, yes.
yeah, I was going to say like I've been going to this acupuncturist, like I've been dealing with my respiratory like asthma stuff and I was going to this acupuncturist for a while recently and I was like, man, this is just not getting better. And when I would ask questions, I wouldn't really get the type of answer I was looking for. And now I've been going to this new person who is much more traditional, and I wasn't expecting her to like go into detail every time I ask a question. It's so refreshing. But I guess what I'm trying to say is when I have sought out mentorship from like Ayurvedic doctors, I might get some mentorship, but I get a lot of like, I'll explain that to you later kind of thing, which is part of why I like Joyful Belly so much because you guys, I mean, you're teachers, but there's no holding back on like asking questions and figuring it out together.
No, yeah, you can't let the ego get in the way. It's incredibly frustrating. I think that the more we share with each other, the more we lift each other up, the more we can share with our clients and with everybody else in our community. The whole idea is spread the light of Ayurveda. So everyone needs to know everything that they can. Let's get this knowledge out there so that our world can be a healthier place.
Where do you think Have you seen that kind of reserved attitude in Ayurveda a lot?
In certain places, I feel like when people feel threatened, that comes up a little bit. And so I don't really want to put any negativity out there, but there are certain areas where people feel their education, their level of education being threatened, or their certification being threatened, or whatever it happens to be. And so they tend to hold on more tightly to what they perceive as theirs instead of wanting to share the knowledge because of maybe what they went through to get there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's behind that necessarily, but it's not something that I subscribe to. One thing that Dr. Halpern used to teach, when people would be like, I'm worried about doing Ayurveda in Grass Valley because so many people are already doing Ayurveda in Grass Valley. And his whole thing was the more people that are doing the thing, the more people know what that thing is, the more people wonder about that thing, the more people want to try that thing. Like if nobody's ever heard of it, people can kind of become leery about it. So
Yeah.
it's sharing the knowledge more and more, gets it out there more and more. And this isn't necessarily answering your question directly, but it is just we have to get this wisdom out there. It has to become, I mean, it used to be part of daily life and it has to become, just how we move through time and space too, in rhythm with nature.
And it's so simple. Like once it clicks, it shifts your entire worldview and it's just so easy. I mean, I know that the Sanskrit terms and stuff can be a little intimidating at the beginning, but once you get it, it kind of simplifies the world in a way.
Absolutely. And it becomes a lens through which the only lens you can really see the world through anymore, because then all of a sudden it makes sense through this lens of understanding everything through the energetics that they are and how you fit into that.
So I'm sure you've been answering this question for a long time. For the person who has never heard of Ayurveda before, what do you tell people Ayurveda is?
Oh man, the elevator pitch
Yeah.
depends on who I'm talking to and what their background is for sure, and how much they really want to know. I might just say, it's the science of life, it's the mother of all healing. I might say it's the holistic healing system from India, which pretty much just, it's the natural and holistic healing system from India that has been there since the beginning of time. Or, it's a science that explains who you are in relation to nature and how you can be most balanced through diet, lifestyle, and all five senses.
When you have new clients, have you had a lot of clients that just didn't know what Ayurveda was and you just kind of met them serendipitously and they were like, you know what, I'm going to go for it. I'll start working with you.
Plenty, sure. And when people, that's something that I ask right out of the gates, because I'm either going to start explaining things in the initial visit or in the report of findings. And I need them to have like a base level of understanding of what Ayurveda is to understand the recommendations, because the pitta part of my brain wants people to really understand the why behind the what. I'm not just going to throw out a bunch of things for you to do without you knowing why. I'm not going to tell you this herb might be good for you without you understanding why. I'm not going to say, oh, yes, here's what you need for that. I'm going to say, and here's why I think, and here's the, science behind it. And I just feel like people deserve to know the why behind the what. It's something that's definitely missing in allopathic medicine and something we can offer our community, is really understanding the fundamental building blocks of this science so that they can understand why we're offering certain recommendations for their path to healing.
When you've been working with clients one-on-one that, like, let's say they're most beginner that they could be, how long do you feel like it's taken them on average to kind of pick it up and I guess like get on the bus, you might say?
A couple few visits. I don't think that takes very long. I think between the initial and the report of findings, I can get across to them the buy-in, if you will, at least understanding the science. And then sometimes for some people, it requires some level of like, okay, I get it. Now I need to try it and see if it works. And then a couple weeks later, when a couple things start working, then there's more buy-in. As soon as something starts to work, they'll try the next thing. And so you're just building trust as you go, for sure.
Yeah. Have you ever had, like, what I've noticed probably in the last year is I've had some new clients and they'll come back to me and they'll be like, "Hey, this is working. I've been struggling with this for a long time and now all of a sudden it's working." And then a week later they'll kind of like bail on working with me, and it almost seems like because it's working like a little too well or a little too quickly, and it's
They
scary.
got the thing. No, like sometimes they're like, thanks, I got the thing. That's all I need.
Yeah, I'm not constipated anymore.
Yeah. Or they're like, oh no, this works. I'm not ready to change my whole life yet. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not ready for that level of healing. Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of times people aren't ready. And whether they know how to articulate that or not is another thing. But, you know, that's another thing that since the beginning has been a huge part of what is important for me to keep in mind and express to those who I'm teaching is that lots of times we're just planting seeds. If somebody comes to us, just having no attachment to, whether somebody's coming back or not is huge. If they need you, they're going to come back. If it's the right timing, they're going to come back. If it's the wrong timing, maybe they'll come back later. And like I was telling you before we started recording, certain person in my family didn't even really know what I did for like 15 years. And then when he, tried something, there was full buy-in. And that is just like part of the kapha mentality, part of like, this is a slow and steady wins the race. When someone's
Yeah.
ready, their minds may open up to it. And sometimes you plant a seed and then a few years later they come back and they're ready for more. I had a client with irritable bowel syndrome in like 2002. I gave her some recommendations and she came back like twice. I never saw her again. And I may have it might have been right before we moved to Colorado. Maybe not. Maybe she just wasn't ready. I can't remember why we didn't talk again at the time, long time ago. Then when we moved back to Tahoe, I can't remember whether I ran into her at the hair salon or something. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is divine timing. Now is when I need to talk to you. Then she was ready to come into it like 10 years later and get back on her healing path. She'd gone and tried other things that didn't work, tried it on her own. And that's another thing is sometimes we give them all these recs and they're like, okay, I got this on my own. Like they think they do. And then when they realize that they actually need the support, then they come back. They're like, just kidding. I need the accountability and the check-in and the ongoing path.
You're like blowing my mind right now because I have my notes here from a conversation I had, but I guess she's like my meditation teacher, but I was talking about some things going on in other places in my life, and she was saying, like you might be in the role, I mean, as a practitioner, you're definitely in that role of being a mentor or a teacher. But she was telling me that you might be a mentor whether you know it or not, and all you're doing is planting seeds. You're not trying to fix anything. You just suggest or like ask the right question that kind of, creates that opportunity for the seed to be planted, and then you just see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I can apply that to my Ayurveda practice too. I haven't been thinking of it that way.
People in the beginning tend to wonder why people aren't coming back or wonder why they're not doing the things like the recommendations. Like, I don't understand. Like, this is going to be so useful to them. Why aren't they doing the things? And we've got to just step back from that and recognize we don't know where these people are at in their journey. We can just offer the knowledge we have. What they're going to do with it is their side of the story.
Hmm. I've
Not
been
helpful. Non-attachment is helpful.
been building up my club and trying to create experiences for my members, but I haven't wanted it to feel like they're in a classroom. But one of the last in-person workshops we did, we went forest bathing, and one of the members was like, "Hey, don't be afraid to like over plan." She was like, you can throw in all of the things, throw in the journaling and like she but it made me think about teaching a yoga class. You get a lot of weird looks from like students in the yoga class, and none of it has to do with the teaching. I don't know the experience that they're having in their body, or I guess the same thing applies to like their experience with what they're learning in Ayurveda. And I find that like I mean, the same thing that I've heard you say is that working with a group is so beneficial because you have this versus doing the one-on-one sessions. And when you're in a group, people have this space to kind of explore it for themselves and then kind of reflect on the experiences that the other members are having too.
Absolutely. You learn so much from each other. And there's accountability with the group because you're showing up every week and you're discussing what you're going through and did you try the recommendation from last week? I mean, what I do is I have, there's the group and then there are accountability pods and then there are the accountability buddies. So there's multi tiers of accountability so that you can be checking in because so many of us are like, if no one's holding us accountable, you're like, actually, what I really want to do is go to that Christmas party and eat all the things on the table and drink all the things over there. So, when we can have a group and say, okay, so what are we all doing this week? How are we holding each other accountable? Who can I text? Who can I call? And what are my goals this week? And that's a big one is like on their own, the people in my group right now have been like, okay, on Sundays, we're going to text each other. These are my goals for this week. This is what I did really good last week. And so they've gotten into that habit on their own, and that's been hugely helpful for them. They can focus on the positive and of what they did right, and then they can reset for what they want to do right in the following week or how they want to up level, if you will.
How many members do you have right now?
So right now I'm just working with my mentorship group and I have 8 folks in that program.
Oh, cool.
And the healing collective that I was doing with autoimmune, we finished out year 2 and I paused that to start the mentorship group. And I want that to be something that restarts every year for the next batch. And I'm reworking my healing collective because it was set for women with autoimmune disease and chronic inflammation initially. But I ended up getting more members who are just like, my chronic inflammation is coming from stress. I just have stress. I want to deal with stress. And so much of it ended up being high levels of stress that I'm like, because in this organically evolving my own practice, like the forest bathing and the nature therapy and nature immersion, and how do we help people live in rhythm with the day, with the seasons, with the lunar cycles, and all of that, that I just want the next iteration of the Healing Collective to be more of a seasonal living, rhythmic living for getting rid of chronic inflammation and stress. I want people's nervous systems to be able to decompress through rhythm with nature. And so I'm reworking it, but not quite yet. I have zero idea when I want to relaunch it because I'm letting that happen organically as I basically writing the book for this mentorship group right now. The mentorship group, I have some serious goals for this moving forward because it's something that's lacking in the Ayurvedic community is mentorship programs in general. And it's something that I'm a board member of the California College of Ayurveda as the education chair. And it's something that we get asked all the time is where can I mentor? And right now there aren't so many answers for that. So I'm answering that by creating this program and writing the book for it and hopefully launching that on a bigger level.
What? So for like your mentees that are just starting, how do you recommend that they start finding clients? Or and do you tell them to keep it kind of broad in the beginning, or do you tell them to kind of niche early?
I am not as big on the niching as many people are. I feel like it's your world, create it however you want. Honestly, like the happier you are with what you're creating, the more clients are going to come to you. So if you don't feel good about niching, don't niche. Do whatever the heck you want. Do, what makes your heart sing and gets you excited. And when your excitement is going to come across to those people you're reaching out to, they're going to feel it and want to be a part of it. How do you get clients is varies on what it is you're trying to create. We were just having this conversation in a mentor call I had earlier today. And the person was like, how do I reach outside of my community? So, because first we are like, okay, I want you to have one workshop a month, building up to building what it is that she's trying to create right now. And in your workshops, you're launching this program. So, and then you also have a landing page on your website. So you're putting on social media, you're creating your funnel, right? Okay, so how do we create a funnel? You've got here's your 5 tips for whatever, and then you're getting them onto your email list. Email list is one of the greatest ways. You have to have a solid email list. So how do you build your email list? Well, get people interested in getting to it, give them value, right? It's all about building value and trust. So you build your little funnels on social media or whatnot. You've got your email newsletter, you're building all of your touch points out, getting out into your actual community with workshops, maybe having virtual workshops. You're still engaged in your own community. Then when we move beyond that, then we're going to hubs. So today the conversation was about how she's reaching out to these hubs, what she has to offer them, how she can create a reciprocal relationship with them so that she's benefiting from their audience and they can benefit from her. And so working out these reciprocal relationships with our community, I think is really fun because you're building more community. Like, how does it benefit me to go to these networking things with the other women entrepreneurs in my community? And at those, it's all about how can we help each other. So networking groups are really beneficial, I find as well, because I want to help every single one of them. I'm like, oh, you do that? Well, I know like 5 people that need you. So I want to
Yeah.
help every one of them, and hopefully they're helping me. They always work out positively, I feel like we're just creating more community. It's like, oh, I know the best mechanic and you know the best blah blah blah, and hey, I do Ayurveda, and here's how that can help you. So building community, building out your hubs, building out, doing podcasts, getting your voice out there every which way that you can is how you're getting clients, really.
Mhm. Do you feel like that is what you were doing towards the beginning of your practice, or has it transformed a lot?
In the beginning, I was giving more talks locally. I definitely stuck local. Like when I opened my Panchakarma Center in Reno, I was going to the local yoga studios talking about what it is that I did. And it was just small. Then when I moved to Colorado, I was in a very small town, just opening up a storefront. Everyone's like, what is this? I was very, very happy when, with the aspect of the pandemic that was positive, was as much as I don't love staring at a computer screen all day, you can grow your business on a much bigger level than you could when you were just in your own. And so getting yourself out there and with social media, you can get a bigger voice and create a greater web of connection through the computer system.
I'm starting to ask a lot of business questions that I need to be asking like easy things. So, speaking of hubs, a big hub for me has been women in construction, like people in the blue collar world, because that's my background. I work in construction now, and I have off and on for like 10 years now. So, I did want to ask, have you had a lot of clients in the blue collar world that are working outside, working like 12 hours a day with really intense schedules? And kind of like what has your experience been working with those kinds of clients?
That's a super interesting question. It's not the majority of my clients, obviously, especially living in Tahoe in California. And, a good bit of my clients coming from the students that I teach and their family members that they're referring to me and that sort of a thing. Like referrals is also how you're getting your voice out there. But I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So, my roots are definitely in blue collar land, and working with people with that background, it tends to just be, I think starting more with the physical rather than the subtle. You're not going to come right out of the gates and be like, what I need you to do is 20 minutes of meditation every morning and every evening. Depending, maybe the person's into that, but I mean, generally speaking, that's not what's out of the starting gates. If my girlfriend that I grew up with calls me up and says, what do I do for my blood sugar? It's going to be a really simple answer, something that is the most bang for her buck that is simple. Like, I want you to stop snacking between your meals, and I want you to eat an earlier, lighter dinner. And start with that, and then call me back when you're done doing that. One
Yeah.
little thing at a time, one little bite of something that they can do. I remember when she called me and said, my husband has high blood pressure and high cholesterol. I've switched his breakfast to Cheerios. What else can I do? That was her first step, one little step. And I was like, can you get a vegetable in? She's like, no, I cannot get a vegetable in. And
It's
can you
off
get more
limits.
water
Yeah.
in? Yeah, I'm like, can you switch out one of the Turner's iced teas for a glass of warm water? Maybe just the first one out of the day. Like, it's literally just switch. You have to do like
Yeah.
what is the one thing that I can switch for something easy that doesn't sound crazy, that I can pronounce, that is going to produce results. And that's pretty much where I start. Then you build trust. Then you can say, actually, I need you to take some Avipadakarchurna before every meal. And they're not going to blink once they trust you. In the beginning, they're like, are you kidding me? That's a hard no.
What do you feel like have been some of those, like the biggest bang for your buck things for people that have had really intense schedules or just not ideal routines? Like they don't have the option to have an ideal routine, really.
Ooh, not the option to have an ideal routine is, first of all, super challenging. And second of all, very common in our society, like nurses and yeah, like people that work through the night. And it makes it really, really hard. Not an ideal routine is figuring out how to do routine. So it really is, rhythm is going to be one of the most balancing things. So let's take a look at the schedule that you have and where can we create rhythm within it. So especially like if you have a very vata vitiated schedule, like 4 days a week, I'm on the night shift and 3 days a week, I'm on the day shift. That's probably one of the most challenging. Give me one night shift person. That's going to be a lot easier to balance out, even though, your cortisol and melatonin is a whole nother reality that we're working with. But when things change, it's so much harder, but you can still find a rhythm that flows through it. We worked with a stewardess at one point in time many years ago who was constantly flying, never staying in her own bed, and had fibromyalgia. And through giving her tools to take with her on these flights that were grounding and created rhythm through all of these hotel stays and flights, she was able to get rid of her symptoms. It was amazing. She was also compliant.
Yeah.
So that's the other side of the thing, is we can recommend all day long, but if the patient isn't compliant. But I digress from the compliancy piece. She was compliant. She did the things. And at the time, nobody was making the little instant packets of khichdi.
Yeah.
You actually had to take all the ingredients. And she did. She'd carry all the khichdi ingredients in a little baby crock pot. And when she would get to her hotel, she would make khichdi. And
Holy
that was like
cow.
her little grounding food. And then she'd do a full abhyanga. Oleation, oleation, oleation for the nervous system. So she was doing karnapurna and nausea and full abhyanga every day just to pacify her nervous system. That was one of the greatest things she could do for herself. She was also working with meditation and pranayama and all of that. But honestly, the grounding into what she was eating, how she was eating, and the oleation factor were probably the most tremendously helpful for her nervous system.
That is amazing because when I am traveling and going to different hotels and driving across the country, like I wanted to be the girl bringing her baby crock pot, and I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to try to stick with high protein, drinking hot drinks, and stick with that. It's really, really hard when you do a lot of traveling.
Absolutely, it is. And now that there are the instant packs of khichdi, that makes it easier. So find the ones you like and take them with
I
you.
haven't seen those actually.
Okay,
I'm gonna,
so they're Divya's Kitchen in New York City. Divya's Kitchen, she makes some that I think are more like the boil in the bag type. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't tried hers, but I trust her. The Gut Center in New York City also. The Gut Center makes these packets that are delicious, like literally delicious. And I have to just preface this by saying she's a Joyful Belly graduate who started this company. And
Really?
I'm also on the advisory board as the Ayurvedic practitioner on the advisory board. And they're my favorite. They literally are. Her spice mix is divine, but it's just everything you need in the little packet. So you pour it into your little baby crock pot, just add water. You don't have to measure, you don't have to think, you just cook it. And then you have delicious kitchery. And she's got a breakfast one and what she calls a dinner one. So you can cook up, the breakfast flavors, which surprised me that I liked the breakfast one a lot. And then the dinner one is divine. She also, by the way, if you're checking out the Gut Center, she has seasonal cleansing stuff and some really great herbal formulations and whatnot. But she makes a little thing called lightning drops that are unflavored electrolyte drops that you just put straight. You just take your little dropper bottle and add to your water to also help with traveling tremendously.
You always have the best hacks. Like,
So that for you, but also, I mean, when you're traveling, the oleation piece is huge, and you don't have to do the full abhyanga if you're out of balance, or if you have too much ama, or if your agni's not there yet, and all of the things. But if you can do a little pot abhyanga so that your sleep is more regulated, and if you can
mhm.
make sure you're putting a little in your nose and your ears in the fall and the winter, just to ground out your senses a little bit more, that's very useful.
Speaking about nausea, what I have been finding is, and this might be like TMI for everybody, but it's fine. We're going to go there. For the nausea, like I've been noticing that it doesn't really seem to help my sneezing because I'm still dealing with this respiratory stuff. And what I've been finding is that like really good chapsticks, like I will just use a chapstick to line my nostrils instead of the oil because the oil doesn't have like the staying power. The
Uh,
chapstick has been working, but
Interesting. So
yeah.
one of the things I got the most of in Reno at the PK Center was people with seasonal allergies down there. So we would do full like Panchakarma style nauseas where you're clearing out, you're doing oleation and fomentation over and over on the head, face, neck, and really getting like I would have washcloths in crock pots of hot water with a bunch of essential oils like eucalyptus and tulsi and rosemary and thyme and all the things that help open your sinuses, right? And so then you're wafting that and hitting the marma points all over the face and opening the nasal passages. And then I take some like Mahanarayan oil or some very opening, warming oil, and also then do some massage and hit all the points. And then so you could do like 3 rounds of that. Give them a full opening. Then their head tilts off the table and you're putting a whole bunch of oil, just the right amount. We're not going to tell your audience how much because this is a practitioner
Yeah.
involved practice, but up each nostril where you're inhaling it way up into your sinuses.
Hmm.
That is what's going to clear all of that, not just a little bit of oil inside that you're massaging inside of your nose, but really getting the oil up into the sinus passages. And not just the oil, but medicated oil specific to you. So making a nausea with the herbs that you need, made into exactly what your brain needs right then or your sinus passages need right then. Like I actually have a patient right now who has MRSA stuck up in her sinuses. And this is something we worked with a lot at that Panchakarma center I had. Like you can get rid of it everywhere and then that's like the last stronghold because it can't easily be reached by allopathy right now, but it can by nausea. And so we made a strain or a nausea formula specific for her strain to get in there antimicrobial, antiviral, whatnot. And now she's also got some mold, so antifungal, and that's clearing out her whole head. But that was like some of my best testimonials in Reno were this is helping my seasonal allergies more than anything else ever has. It's just it's just ramping it up a level, Lisa, from probably what you were doing, staying power wise, to increasing the potency.
Well, the main reason I started doing the chapstick is because I have a whole bunch of nausea oil, but I can't find it anywhere. Like I'm like I can't buy, I'm not going to buy another bottle of it. I've got 4 bottles here. But, but, well, and like one of the main things that I've noticed is just so much sensitivity. Like the cold air is what's been making me sneeze. But what are some of the most dramatic results you've gotten from working with nausea oil with your clients? In addition to that.
Yeah, that's for sure. One of the biggest is getting rid of that staph up in the head and helping people dramatically with their seasonal allergies. I don't do panchakarma anymore. I don't want to have a brick and mortar, and I don't want to do panchakarma anymore. I don't mind training people on it, and I really enjoyed teaching those classes, but I'm not out there in the world doing that. I am making medicated nauseas, and the one that comes to mind right now that really we had dramatic results with, because nausea is recommended for anything from the neck, shoulders up, right? It's just an anupana, a way of bringing medication to anything from the shoulders up, directly to source rather than having to go through the whole GI tract. So I had a client who had severe nervous system imbalance, PTSD, and had to take a leave of absence from work and was really working on doing the work. She was doing the work. This is where you get the most results again when there's that compliancy. And she was doing her meditations. She was eating the right foods in the right ways. But when we brought diet and lifestyle, she was getting on point. When we brought in herbs, which is sort of a crutch while you're implementing diet and lifestyle for the lasting results, the herbs that we brought in via nausea for her mental emotional state. She really loved how much it pacified her whole nervous system. She made this beautiful formula that was really great for not just pacifying, but also tonifying. Nourishing, building a Rasayana formula that helped her system calm down and get out of that sympathetic state, and also tonify and strengthen and build the ojas so that she could heal completely.
Hmm. Wow.
And that was profound. She loved her nausea formula. I love when people actually want to take it for their mind. Getting people convinced that they want to put a bunch of oil up their nose is not always an easy sell. I'm usually giving that to people who have somewhat of a background already in this science. It's not
Yeah.
something that I'm offering
Well, the
anybody.
first time you try it, it is a little scary until
Yeah,
you realize that you can snort oil up into your sinuses, and if you snort it and you don't swallow the oil, it like you can breathe the whole
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah. It's not bad, guys.
And it's easy. It's easy way to get the medicine up in your head. I thought of something while we were on our bathroom break. Well, I thought of multiple things because my brain doesn't stop. Um, First, I just wanted to, before we get too far away from it, in helping clients with erratic schedules and busy schedules and crazy lives, Ayurveda only works if it fits into real life. So if we give them the list of 100 recommendations that we know will be helpful for them, if it doesn't work with their body, if it doesn't work with their life and their lifestyle, it's not going to work. And so we have to find something to meet them where they're at. Less is more. And if we can find one or two non-negotiable rhythms, not long protocols, like focusing on sleep timing, focusing on meal regularity, focusing on nervous system regulation, that's going to be the most beneficial. In fact, I had my mentor group go over a case study this morning, and we were talking about someone with severe vata overwhelm. And I was showing them in actuality after everyone gave all their recommendations, and we've all got a million, all these things that will help and all these things they need to do, which is just going to add to the vata overwhelm, right? In real life, I had them pick the one thing, the one non-negotiable that they were going to do every day. And that was going to be that they were not going to pick up their phone first thing in the morning. They were going to do 2 minutes of breath work first. And then they could pick up their phone and hurry up and see what was next. And
Right?
That was the first recommendation, one thing that they could do. And, they saw a list of some options and they chose. That's another thing, is allow them to choose what it is that they can meet themselves where they're at. So I just wanted to add that. If it adds stress, it's not healing. The other thing on bathroom break that came to me was something that is going to work that is important for people with busy lives and busy, crazy, erratic schedules. Is in Ayurveda, we preach, do not suppress your natural urges. But I don't think we actually talk about this enough in real life practice. Nurses are holding themselves all the time from going to the bathroom. Truck drivers are holding themselves from going to the bathroom all of the time. And when you look into the ancient texts, when you look into the Charaka Samhita, when you look into the Sushruta Samhita, and you look at the Nidana, the causative factors of disease, almost always suppression of natural urges is listed as a cause of disease. And those urges are not just pee and go to the bathroom. It's also hunger, thirst, sleep, tears, sneezing, yawning. They're not random inconveniences. They are movements of life force, movements of prana, trying to flow in a specific direction. Vata is movement in the body, right? So any of these movements are vata trying to flow in a certain direction at a certain time. And when the urge arises, it's the body saying, now is the moment for release. Now is the moment for intake. Now is the moment for rest. And when we suppress that movement, it interrupts pranic flow. It interrupts vata. And it creates vata disturbance. So, vata dosha, as mentioned, is governing all movement, nerve impulses, elimination, circulation, movements of our mind. And when we suppress that natural urge and movement is blocked, vata becomes disturbed, energy moves against its natural direction, and this creates tension, it creates dryness, it creates pain, it creates anxiety, irregular digestion, inflammation. Over time, the body starts to work against itself. The nervous system goes into control instead of trust. So suppressing those urges can override sensation. We're ignoring signals and we're prioritizing productivity over physiology. So it shifts us from listening to controlling, and it shifts us from regulation to dysregulation. And the nervous system forgets then how to self-regulate. So then we end up with digestive disorders, hormonal imbalances, chronic fatigue, pain syndromes, emotional suppression, all the stress-related illnesses. And suppression leads to accumulation of ama. The body learns to not signal. And this really is relevant for the blue collar and the high demand work, for people who work the long hours, people who can't leave the job site, people who push through pain. I have so many clients who are like, I don't have time to leave my desk for lunch. Eat on the run, ignore their fatigue. And, how long have we been praising their toughness or praising their ability to push through? There was years of my waitressing where like, you don't pee till the end of your shift because there's just no time. The body's keeping score. So Ayurveda teaches us that disease begins when we stop listening to the body. And suppressing our natural urges is one of the fastest ways that communication breaks down.
This is exactly what made me, like, my first job out of school was a solar company building solar farms. And I didn't realize fully that it was construction, and then I got in and I was like, wow, these guys, everyone's stressed out. Everyone's being mean to each other. They're getting off work and drinking, just like eating and drinking until 2 a.m. I mean, literally, I was seeing this happen until 2, wake up at 6, go run a crew at 7 a.m. and do it all over again. And I was like, there's got to be a different way to do this. And you're right, like especially in construction, what I see a lot of is pushing through the pain. And I think a lot of people don't realize that they're uncomfortable in their body, like their anger or their irritation that's coming out like onto their coworkers or whatever. It's coming out through their behavior. they might seem like they're being a jerk, but maybe they're just uncomfortable in their body.
For sure, and they don't have they're not they have no tools to listen to their body. This happens a lot in actually our community here in like ski patrol or search and rescue or people that are just on paramedics and the firefighters and everything. Like they're so on and they're in such a state of hyper focus and with intense things that then they drink all night to sort of
Yeah,
mask everything that they've been through. And then they drink coffee all morning. And it's just this constant state of sympathetic nervous system activation that they have no idea why they're angry, frustrated, overwhelmed, and all of the things. Like
right.
it's an absolute masking or it's an unawareness. And so Ayurveda is just language to become aware of what's actually happening in our body. It reconnects us to ourselves.
I think that I've been a little nervous about using some of the traditional like Ayurvedic terms or whatever, but I want to start leaning more into it because it feels more natural to me to speak in Ayurvedic language anyway. And I think that just I guess just personally for my practice and my group that I'm trying to grow, I just don't think that there's a way around it. Have to use the Ayurvedic language because there's the soul of the teachings is kind of in those words. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. But you can also explain it. Like you can say, oh, the way Vata moves, here's what Vata is. It's just movement in our body. You can like simplify the language of everything and explain what that means, but still give them a little bit of the historical, the
Right.
classical. Yeah.
Yeah. I did
I
want
don't
to
think
talk
it
a little.
hurts it, and I don't think it makes it less accessible personally.
Right. And I think that's what I was afraid of is making it less accessible, but I'm gonna lean back into it. Could you tell the story about your family member that started getting more involved with your
Well,
practice?
yeah, just when you were asking about blue collar stories before we chatted, and I mentioned my dad, he had, I don't even know if we'd ever talked about what I did for a living for many, many years. I mean, he knew I did something. I don't even know, like what he knew I was rafting, but in terms of the Ayurveda, like I just don't know if it ever came up in conversation for many, many years. And then he acquired Lyme somewhere along the line, and it really inflamed his system and he was in a lot of pain and it was affecting his quality of life for sure. And he tried all sorts of things. And I'm not even sure why it took me so long to remember to tell him that I do this for a living. I just always figure, here's another thing is I always figure people will come to me. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna come to you and be like, you know what you need to do? Like I'm waiting for it to be asked and that's it. I'm just waiting to be asked. So, but at some point during the pandemic, I was like, hey, Dad, do you want to join the cleanse? I do a seasonal every spring and every fall. I lead a 3-week guided Ayurvedic cleanse online. And maybe it was actually because it was the first time I was doing it online. I'd always done it at the yoga studio here. And so I reached out and was just like, I think you might like this or at least benefit from it if you don't like it. So do you want to try it? And he was like, sure, why not? And everyone was home. Everyone was kind of trying new things during the pandemic. It was a really good opportunity. He tried it. He loved it. He lost 35 pounds on the first cleanse, which seems overwhelming in 3 weeks until you realize that that's just was his inflammation weight. He's like, I lost 35 pounds of inflammation weight, and he hadn't felt healthier in many years. And after that, came out for a visit, and we were hiking. He was on the ropes courses with us. He was doing all these things he hadn't done in years, biking and swimming and supping and all the things we do regularly. Felt great and amazing. Nobody in my family even believed what he was doing out here. They're like, no, that's not dad. And it's true, like, and so then he's like, I'm never missing a cleanse. And he hasn't since then ever missed a cleanse. He does them every year because we all fall off track sometimes. None of us are always doing all the right things all the time. And doing a seasonal cleanse is a great opportunity for a seasonal reset. Every spring and every fall in Ayurveda, we have time set aside for a reset because it's the best time to release excess buildup in our body. And it allows us to get back into healthy rhythms again if any of those rhythms have fallen off. So he started doing that, and now he will not miss one. And it was one of the best things that happened to him. And now khichdi, the food of Ayurvedic seasonal cleansing, is part of his regular rotation. He loves the khichdi these days.
That's really good. It's such a good story.
It's just it's unique that, you're like, you forget sometimes that what you do can help all these people all the time. I love that that's your audience, is the blue collar audience. I'm sitting here waiting for the yogis to come ask me questions about their health and well-being, when really we can help. Ayurveda helps everyone. Dr. Halpern also used to say Ayurveda helps 100% of the people 100% of the time when there's 100% compliance. Like, if people have
Yeah.
buy-in and they're willing to do the work, we can help you. We promise.
Speaking of, I guess, compliance. So it sounds like really you've shifted from doing a more one-on-one model to doing clubs, which is what I'm doing too. But how do you feel like it has changed your practice and the results that you get for people? Or I guess they get from working with you?
It depends on the person. But what I really love about clubs is that it is so beneficial to heal in community. And we can have the support of each other. We can have the accountability of each other. We can have the experiences of each other. And now there's so much science behind that. We can look up the science behind how healing in community is so much more beneficial and easier than healing alone. So it just offers us this more, I don't know, more beautiful, more well-rounded, more beneficial path towards healing, where we can do it with each other. We're missing community so much in our society as it is. And so if we're bringing ourselves back into balance, and we are microcosms of the macrocosm in Ayurveda, we understand this. When we're healing ourselves, we're healing the whole. So why not work in community on this? And that it just up levels the whole thing. When we're healing ourselves in community, so much more light is spreading at the same time. We can uplift even more people together. And it's just more fun. Like, it's genuinely more fun to heal in community than on our own. Also, I mean, how many times do you go into a practitioner and they're like, here's what you need to do? And then you do it for a couple of weeks and then you don't. What happens when you commit to a healing path in community is you can habit stack. Someone's holding you accountable. You're all holding each other accountable. You build the one habit, you can add the next habit, you can add the next habit. And then when you look back at the end of a year, you're like, holy moly, I just literally changed my whole life. And everyone did that together. And it's a beautiful experience that happens so much easier in community than it does by yourself.
Yeah, what I've found is cool is that, members will try something and then they'll be like, "Oh, this didn't work for me. It's not working. What's wrong?" But then they can see somebody else that's been in the club or, seen their evolution and see like, okay, well, this habit didn't work for them 6 months ago, but now it worked for them. Maybe it can work for me too if I just change my approach or, I mean, they'll find like ways to collaborate together. And so it's not just, I don't feel great being like, hey, you really need to go to bed at 10 p.m. every night. Like, pay me the money for our session. And then the next session is like, you're still not going to bed at 10 every night. You need to do that. Pay me.
Yeah. Well, creative
Yeah.
support comes, with all of Ayurveda, we're offering creative support. We're offering ways to make these tools actually work. It's all upashaya and upashaya, trial and error. And when you have a whole community discussing, well, the way that I made this work for me was, or like, how do you make nausea accessible? How do you make, rhythm with your meals accessible on the road? How do you make khichdi in your hotel room? When you've got 10 people talking about that, you get 10 different ideas, then you can really start to find the ways that are going to work for you. The trial and error
Yeah.
becomes much easier.
What are I think you've talked about this a little bit, but what are some of the biggest trends? I guess you've had a couple of different types of groups now. Did you notice any big trends that kind of took on their own life in your groups?
Well, yeah, I mean, just starting an autoimmune group and it turning into more of a nervous system group, I feel like that's almost like, when you think about it, like, okay, yeah, obviously, because stressors are creating oxidative stress in our system, which is creating inflammation, which is ultimately building up and creating autoimmune disease. So it all comes back to how we can regulate our nervous system and regulate our digestive system both. So there is a big trend right now in understanding how we can move from sympathetic back into parasympathetic, how we can down-regulate our nervous system, how we can activate our vagal nerve, and how important that is to really then optimize our digestive system. Microbiome is a giant trend right now too. Like, how can we optimize our microbiome? They're super interrelated, our nervous system and our digestive system. So working on them simultaneously is super important. Even in 2001, when I started to study Ayurveda, it was about every time where we're like, what is for the diet? What is for the mind? Working on them both simultaneously all the time. The physical body and the mental emotional body, the HPA axis, all of the gut brain connection happening in there and how that affects the microbiome and vice versa. So understanding this, I feel like this is a bigger trend in the functional medicine world now that we can really address from the Ayurvedic perspective more holistically or individually, like really understanding how these connections work from the Ayurvedic through the Ayurvedic lens and how to address each individual that way sort of took on its own life in my healing collectives as well, with just like, okay, how are we going to address microbiome? How are we going to address inflammation? How are we going to address all of these things that aren't Ayurvedic terms that are super important and people are looking at right now through the Ayurvedic lens and through Ayurvedic healing?
Have you noticed a shift in the primary issues that clients have compared from when you started your practice to now?
Yeah, and that's why I started the healing collective as an autoimmune healing collective, because probably 10% of my clients in 2005 had autoimmune disease. Probably 80% of them now have autoimmune disease. I mean, it was just a huge ramp up, huge. And I was like, I have to address this on a bigger level. I need a healing collective for this. That's sort of where that all started, is just, you know, seriously, 80% of the people that come to me, it's, they've got some type of hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's is probably the most common right now for me in autoimmune disease, whereas it used to be more IBS, IBD. But now it's like, and Crohn's, and this, and that, and it's across the board spectrum of um, autoimmune disease just from dysregulation. And for me, like when I look at the big picture of that, it goes back to what I was just talking about with suppression of natural urges, which is forgetting our connection, like not listening to our bodies, dysregulation from our environment and the rhythms of nature. So the more we can bring people back to understanding how the rhythms of the day work, the circadian rhythms, the lunar rhythms, the rhythms of the season, and what that means in our unique body and how what we can do to create balance. That's all I really want to do at the end of the day, is help you know yourself better so that you can balance yourself in the environment that you're in with the means that we have in Ayurveda, basically with what grows where you are, honestly. And not even necessarily that, just like know yourself well enough to know it's time for warm food. And now, that's too much liquid. That's not enough liquid. These are simple little things where we can just understand our own body and how to balance ourselves in the environment that we're in. We're going to, and have the awareness of where our nervous system and our digestive system and our whole being are at, so we can just, like, people will say to me, "Well, what's your dosha?" And honestly, like, I couldn't answer that question, and I don't ever want to answer that question. I don't care. Because for me, it's not about that. It's about, like, right now, I feel the mobility of this season, like right now every fall, I'm like, oh, my hands are drying out. It's time to oleate.
Mhm.
And every summer I'm like, whoo, overheating. You need to make some cilantro coconut chutney and drink more hibiscus tea, or the things that we know that balance the energetics. It's hot, I'm going to cool myself down. It's dry, I'm going to oleate myself. And so I'm just tuning into my own system in the moment and bringing in the things that create balance with that. And that's all I want for all of my clients, is for them to know themselves and be able to answer to their body talking to them.
I think that's something that happens as we get older. Something about, like, transitioning into adulthood, you just stop we stop responding to what we notice. So a lot of people will just be like, "It's wintertime, my hands get dried out." And they're like, "That's just the way it is." I'm trying to think of other examples, but it's like, "Okay, I get this weird rash every summer. That's just the way it is." But if we just pay attention, I mean, rashes and stuff might be getting a little more, where you would want to go see a practitioner or something. But if you can just learn the gunas, just learning the spectrum of these opposites, you can learn to balance yourself pretty easily. And it's all about noticing and just respond to whatever the changes that you're seeing.
Absolutely. Also, self-advocation once you do know, because for so many of my clients that are like, I don't have time for lunch. They don't give me enough lunch. I can't sit down for lunch. I'm like, no, lunch is a self-advocation situation. I want you to go talk to your boss and tell them this is your health that we're talking about, and that your practitioner, if you can't speak for yourself, you go in and say, my practitioner told me that I need a lunch break and that I have to sit down away from my computer to eat my lunch. Everyone deserves that. And once they do that, they're like, oh, well, okay, now I'm allowed to have that. Like, you don't have to work through lunch. That's not healthy at all.
Yeah.
So many people do. And so just getting people to sit down and eat their lunch away from a computer and off of their phone is tremendously helpful to your health, surprisingly or unsurprisingly. But self-advocation is huge, because it really isn't like, oh, I'm not allowed. No, just go speak up for yourself.
Yeah, that is a really good point. I feel like it's so easy to argue for our limitations, and people won't realize that that's really what they're doing. But, just by doing what you're saying, you can realize that, hey, maybe this is kind of self-imposed. What else in my life is self-imposed? Like,
Hmm.
where else am I putting responsibilities on myself that nobody else is asking me to do? And just by eliminating that stressor, like, everything changes.
Yeah, start to nurture yourself.
Jeremy, can you think of any other things that we need to touch on? I feel like we've got a whole lot in here so far.
One of the questions you were asking me earlier was about how, like, creating your club or creating your healing collective or creating or whatever is a way of bringing all of who you are and your passions kind of together into one thing. But also, how you had initially had your club for a certain audience, a certain niche. And then what do you do when you want to branch out? And that was one evolution of my practice, that I realized, like, in the beginning, I had all these compartmentalized pieces of myself. Here is my bartending world. Here is my mom world. Here is my Ayurveda world. Here is my whitewater rafting world. And slowly but surely, I was like, well, I kind of want to get rid of the bartending world. And I want mom world to sort of be all encompassing, which working from home really helps with that. And just making Ayurveda part of daily life. And then how do I merge my whitewater rafting world with my Ayurveda? And I started trying to do that in 2011. And finally, 2018, made it to India for, I was invited to speak at a cancer prevention conference. And I figured, while I'm here, I need to go rafting. Magically found my way up to the Ganga River, went rafting. And at the end of the day, said to the owner of the company, oh, so what do I owe you? And he said, oh, just bring some people back someday. And so that was the, like, well, that's a fabulous idea. Let's do that. So then I started putting together the trip of my dreams. And this is like really when I started to go, what do I want to create? And as a practitioner, the more enthusiastic you are about what you're putting out into the world, the more people are drawn to you, and the right people are drawn to you for you. the right people who like your energy for who you are and not who you're trying to be. And so just being yourself and everything that you are. So then I was like, well, I want to hike the Himalayas for a few days, and I want to raft the river on a multi-day for a few days. And then I want to go to an Ayurveda retreat center for a few days. So they helped me put all of this together. And now that's one of the annual retreats that I run. And it's just so fun trying to explain to the Sattvic Ayurvedic crowd that would like to know how I can incorporate whitewater rafting in. It, for me, has always made logical sense because when I'm in a river, I am fully immersed in the five elements. I am one with the river. I am one with the elements. I'm sleeping outside. Like, I don't want to take you on like a whoop-de-woo through the rapids. Sure, we might have some rapids, but I want you to float down for a few days to fully just be immersed in the elements. I want you to let nature do its thing. I want the negative ions to do their things. I want the phytoncides to do their things. I want the bird calls to do their things. Everything that decompresses your nervous system and brings you back into the moment. But I was reading this rad article in Outside Magazine like yesterday or something that was talking about like why adventure. And it made sense for Ayurveda what they were talking about. And they were talking because I always tell people like when I'm rowing, that's my meditation. I'm one with the river. I'm just focusing on what that current is doing to my boat, and I'm dancing with the currents of the river. And it's just such an amazing feeling to just be with the flow of the earth, you know, and you're just in it. Which is especially why people who like to run the Grand Canyon like to be down there, because then you're 18 to 24 days just in it. Um, the the wording that they used in this article was really unique. They called it unfragmented consciousness. When you're doing adventure activities, it gives you unfragmented consciousness, which is basically the same thing as saying it's the meditation on the moment, right? You're just, that's all that you can do. You have one pointed focus on either what your guide is doing or as the guide, where my boat is going and what my command is next. You're not distracted by 10 million things. You are only in the moment, and it's such a unique way to get into that very moment and have a shared experience, to allow movement and nature and ritual to do the healing and remove people from the constant input and just put them into nature for connection, for community, for healing. And nature just naturally restores coherence. We keep talking about all these habits that realign us with the rhythms of nature, but getting into nature is the easiest and fastest way to do that. So finally, for me, those things were able to come together. And I have the annual India retreat, and I also have a Costa Rica retreat where we raft into the resort, then do all kinds of fun Ayurveda things and writing things. And then and it's an off-grid eco resort in the jungle. And then we raft out. And that's a really awesome experience that my friend and I, she's an author, so she leads all the writing. And we just dive deep into the psyche and then go
Huh?
ziplining and climb the waterfalls. So
I need to
that
go on one of these.
yeah, everyone does. Literally everyone. It's so fun. I feel like for practitioners, it's how can you help spread the light in a way that lights you up? That's going to be the best way that you can do it. Obviously, you want to meet all of your clients' needs where they're at. We can support everyone as long as they are open to it and they're compliant. It's such a wonderful science that really does address everything. All we have to do is find the way. And the best way as a practitioner is the way that you feel best about. Don't
Yeah.
find some niche that sounds good or that's what everyone's talking about. Find what makes your heart sing and offer that to your community. And for me, it's mentoring practitioners, it's teaching, it's creating ripples out into the world in all the ways that are fun for me and also let people explore nature in a more natural way. But evolutionary wise, I think moving from individual healing into community healing is one of the best things that we can do for our community. And I'm super happy that you are out there doing that as well, and that more and more people in the Ayurveda world are creating these community healing opportunities, because it really is more fun to heal that way and more effective scientifically.
More fun and more effective. I definitely agree with that. I definitely have kind of been pulling from what I've been seeing you doing. You've inspired me because I was like, well, I could do like 4 retreats a year and pick a place that like I really want to get to know. Like I want to spend time in Sedona. I
Yeah,
haven't really ever spent any time out there. I'm like I could go there. I could find like the places that feel the most healing for me and I could be like, well, let's do a retreat here.
absolutely do it. It's so fun. Highly recommend.
I can't I'll let you know, like, when I've kind of restructured everything, I'll tell you about it. Well, I think that that's everything I wanted to talk about tonight. I feel like we've gotten a lot of really good stuff in there for anybody that is kind of new to Ayurveda that maybe wants to, like, try a few things or maybe they hear something that resonates with them, give it a try. Jeremy, I'd love to have you back on again sometime. Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you. I have missed you and it's exciting to chat again. I mean, honestly, Thrive is in the name of your program here, of this podcast. Ayurveda teaches us that thriving is not about doing more. It's just about living in alignment with who we actually are. And so for us to be able to help people come back into that alignment with who they actually are, we're not trying to make them be anybody that they're not. I think that's more accessible to the blue collar workers, to everyone that's just a grounded human. Is like, I'm not trying to make you do any weird anything. I'm just trying to help you know yourself better, live in alignment with who you really are, and you're going to feel better. Wake something up and and that's probably the easiest way I think we could all spread the light, is just helping people live in rhythm.
That was
And
really eloquent. Thank you. You're always eloquent on the spot.
man, I hope that you have a wonderful solstice, a wonderful Christmas, wonderful holiday season, and an amazing New Year.
Thank you. You too. I'm gonna try to make it to more of the live classes too. I've
Awesome.
been doing
And
all the recordings.
that would thrill me to no end. I will see you there. All right, take
Well,
care.
thank you everybody, and we will see you on the next episode.